Hey everyone, Tanner here, and in this one, I wanted to give you an update on my Betta Casper and his Blackwater setup. It's been up and running now for about 6 months, and it's doing really well. To give you a better idea of what I mean, we'll do a little before and after. Initially it was pretty sparse, and that's to be expected since the tank wasn't seasoned. Nowadays it's looking nice and established. Especially the Cryptwenti bronze. I knew it would fill in the space given enough time, and it's finally looking proper. You may be saying to yourself though, what goes into maintaining a setup like this? Well, I have to do maintenance now, so let's talk about it. Most of the time I start by trimming the plants, but today I had to remove some salvinia from the water's surface that didn't work out. Then I could proceed to trim the plants. This is something I do as needed, which is about every other month. I usually just trim off any unsightly leaves to help promote new growth. During this process, I also have to trim the roots of the plants growing above the water line. These roots are obviously good for the plant that they belong to, and I know Casper enjoys them, but they'll cause issues for the other plants long term. So I trim them back to make them less invasive. These roots are from the purple waffle plant, which I added not long ago to get some riparian growth. My plan was initially to get that growth out of the Kleiner bar sword, but it took a while to get established. However, at this time, there is some good healthy growth to it, so I presume it should make its way out of the water eventually. While we're talking about riparian plants though, why don't we add some more? What I have here are several clean bare root plants. I also have some brown sewing thread. Using the thread, I tie them onto the driftwood, making sure that the roots are fully submerged. Over time the thread will eventually break down, but by that time the roots will have attached themselves to the wood and will no longer be needed. In time, I'm looking to have some serious above the rim growth with this tank, and I think these will help me do exactly that. And here's how it looks after getting all of the plants attached. Much better if you ask me. Now that we got that out of the way, I'll finish cleaning the tank. I always clean off the front of the glass to make sure that there's a pristine viewing surface. After that, I drain about 30% of the water into a separate container. Using the dirty tank water, I clean up the filter media. After all of that, the tank is then filled back up with some clean, dechlorinated tap water. My botanicals also needed replenished, so we'll do that as well. I get my designated botanical pot, filled up with an assortment of items, add some water, and then bring it to a boil on the stove. I usually let everything boil for 10 to 15 minutes to sanitize them and to allow them to sink faster. After boiling, I add some more water to cool it down faster so I don't have to keep it on the stove. Usually I let this pot sit overnight to ensure that most, if not all of the botanicals are fully waterlogged when I go to use them. I should mention that I did all of this prior to the maintenance session you just saw. Moving forward again to the current day, I could add the botanicals to the clean setup. I just randomly drop them in the tank and move them around with my tweezers to get a cleaner distribution. In doing so, I try not to overdo it because I want the placement to look natural. Now I know many of you are saying, I thought you said this was a Blackwater setup. That is true, but I typically use rooibos tea to get the Blackwater effect, so it's a little bit worn off at this time. I like to use loose leaf tea because that's what I drink myself. Usually I brew some up for me and share it with Casper, but today this is all him. I put some tea in a diffuser ball and hook it onto the side of the tank. Him and his shrimp friends are always really curious about it when I first add it into the tank. About a half hour later, and the tank ended up looking like this. I've experimented with various levels of tint, and this seems to be what I prefer. Light enough to still see in the tank well, yet dark enough to still look the part. In conclusion, I really enjoy this tank, as does Casper and the Amano Shrimp. I guess the snails probably do as well, but who really knows what they're thinking. I usually don't do much more than a water change and add additional tannins. Occasionally I trim the plants, add more botanicals, or adjust things like you saw in this video. I'd say that maintenance on this one really isn't any different than any of my other tanks though. Keep it clean, feed the fish, and enjoy. Should there really be anything else needed? Anyways, I hope you all enjoyed this little update. Thank you so much for tuning in, I really appreciate it. Be sure to give the video a thumbs up if you liked it, and I'll see you in the next one, Serpa Squad. Peace.